Hello, and welcome to Starbound. My name is I Am Duck, and I'll be your narrator. If you enjoy human-created HFY stories and want to support us, we're on Patreon now. You'll also get access to exclusive stories you won't hear anywhere else. Link is in the description. Now let's get into it. The Directorate of Observation ran on order, not the imposed order of authority demanding compliance, the deeper order of a system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Every feed logged, every anomaly flag, every datum filed in its proper place. Sereth Duval had spent 11 years inside that system. He had never found a reason to want anything different. The Directorate's founding principle was simple. The Watcher held authority. The Watched was subject to it. Order did not require force. It required certainty. The certainty on the part of the Watched, that they might always be observed. DeVale had built his career on that certainty. It had never once given him cause to question it. He moved through the monitoring station the way he always moved, without hurry. The station hummed around him, banks of feeds running in silent parallel, the soft amber glow of active capture units reflected in the dark surfaces of the consoles. The air carried the faint coolant and circuitry scent that DeVale associated with competent infrastructure, the smell of things working as they should. He was slight, as all Benthari were, his movements careful and unhurried. The monitoring station's amber glow caught the pale tracery visible beneath the skin at his wrists and temples as he worked, and his optical inserts reflected it back flat and still. 3 weeks into the Serapis operation, feeds clean, units deployed, transmitting, logging, everything nominal, almost everything. He pulled up Unit 7's log without sitting down. Standing was faster. He had learnt that early in his career. The analyst who sat down too quickly was the analyst who stopped moving too soon. A standing analyst was uncommitted, still available to be wrong, still ready to move to the next thing when the current thing resolved. Sitting meant you had decided you knew what you were looking at. He had not decided that yet. Unit 7 was their most capable mobile platform. Extended range, passive emission masking across 14 frequency bands, acoustic dampening rated for environments up to 90 decibels of ambient noise. The engineering division had delivered it with the satisfaction of people who knew they had built something worth building. DeVale had deployed it to Serapis Station 3 weeks ago with the same quiet satisfaction. It belonged there. The operation warranted it, which made the blackout entry in Unit 7's log an affront. 8 hours, 53 minutes. Not a catastrophic failure. The unit had come back online. The feed was running now, clean and steady, numbers moving in their proper ranges. But 11 hours and 17 minutes of dark was 11 hours and 17 minutes of nothing in the record, and the record was the point. The Directorate did not work with gaps. Gaps were where things happened that no one could account for afterward. Gaps were how operations quietly went pear apple-shaped, while everyone watched the feeds that were still running. DeVale pulled the pre-blackout feed. The feed resolved. Hutton's workshop at Serapis Station, joint-operated colony facility, mixed civilian and contractor population. The workshop was not a military installation, not a research facility. It was a workspace. Benches, tools, components in various states of assembly. The kind of place where practical people did practical work, and the most dangerous thing on the premises was a poorly grounded power coupling. One occupant. The file on him was thin and clean, the way files on genuinely unremarkable people tended to be. C. Clayton Hutton. Technical contractor. 3 years into his contract at Serapis. No flagged associations, no elevated clearance, no entry in any watch list the Directorate had access to. He was, by every metric they used, an ordinary man doing ordinary work in an ordinary facility. Unit 7 had been watching him along with everyone else. The Directorate did not surveil people because they were suspicious. It surveilled people because it was better to have the record and not need it. He had scarred hands. DeVale noticed that first. The way a trained eye catches the detail that does not quite match the file. Not the scars of carelessness or accident. The scars of someone who had spent years working with materials that occasionally pushed back. Old scars, mostly, pale against the skin. A few newer, the hands of a man who had been doing this work for a long time and had no objection to the evidence it left. Hutton moved through the workshop with economy. No wasted motion. He crossed to a bench along the far wall and lowered himself onto a stool with the unhurried ease of a man entirely at home in his surroundings. The bench in front of him held a project in progress. Components laid out in a careful arrangement that spoke of deliberate organization rather than the casual scatter of work interrupted and abandoned. DeVale catalogued what he could see. He could not identify what was being built. The components were individually recognizable. Surface mount elements, power management assemblies, housings that might belong to half a dozen different classes of devices. Their combination produced nothing in his catalogue. An unidentified project, probably bespoke, nothing that warranted flagging. He noted it as background and moved on. Hutton fitted a magnification device over his eyes, picked up a tool and began to work. The feed ran for another 43 minutes. Hutton worked. He did not speak. He did not consult reference materials. He made small adjustments, set components aside, retrieved others. Occasionally he paused to examine a piece of the assembly at closer range, turning it slowly in those scarred hands before setting it back down. His attention to the work was complete and unbroken. There was nothing in his behavior to suggest anything other than what he appeared to be, a man doing his job. Then he paused. It was a small thing. His hand stilled on the bench. His head did not move, not toward the unit, not toward anything. But the magnification device made his eyes easy to read, and they moved. DeVale had spent 11 years reading feats, learning to read the way bodies betray intention before the body acts, and he recognized the shift. Hutton's attention had tracked to something near the unit's position, quiet, deliberate, gone in a beat. A breath, perhaps two. Then he picked up his tool and went back to work. DeVale noted it, filed it. Subject displayed momentary inattention to task. Cause unclear. No threat behavior, no indication of awareness of surveillance. Standard notation for a minor anomaly without downstream significance. The feed ended 11 seconds later. He moved to the designation record. Unit 7 had gone dark at 03:47 station time, deep in the low activity window, when the facility's population was at rest and the corridors were empty. It had come back online at 15:04, 8 hours, 53 minutes. He considered hardware fault first, power irregularity, component failure, the kind of thing that happened to field equipment regardless of build quality. He ran the diagnostic against that frame and found it wanting. The unit's internal log showed no power anomaly before the blackout, no temperature event, no impact, nothing in the environmental record to suggest external interference. The unit had simply stopped transmitting. He set the cause question aside and turned instead to the feed itself. Unit 7 was online, running. He pulled the current capture and ran his analysis suite across it. The way he ran his suite across every feed as a matter of discipline. He stopped. The resolution was different. He ran the analysis again, more carefully. The feed from Unit 7 was not merely clean. It was better, higher resolution by a measurable margin. Richer in the mid-spectrum, with detail in low-light ranges, the unit had not been returning before the blackout. The acoustic capture was sharper. The analysis suite had taken 3 additional cycles to decode the incoming format. Because the incoming format was not quite the format the suite had been calibrated to receive. Unit 7 was transmitting above its rated specification. The power consumption log showed a marginal increase, nothing outside operational tolerance, but present. He filed it as firmware overhead. The engineering division pushed updates on their own schedule and rarely bothered to notify field operations. It was an ongoing source of minor professional irritation. He noted it, flagged it for acknowledgement, and moved on. DeVale stood very still for a moment. Then he sat down. The sensor recalibration theory came together in 20 minutes. DeVale built it carefully, the way he built everything, from the evidence outward, not from a conclusion backward. Field units operating in mixed atmosphere environments were subject to particulate accumulation on optical surfaces. Accumulation degraded resolution over time. A significant accumulation event, followed by a cleaning cycle triggered by an internal threshold, could, in principle, result in a temporary blackout, followed by a marked improvement in feed quality. The unit's acoustic dampening systems ran a parallel calibration cycle under the same trigger conditions. That accounted for the sharper audio capture. The format variance was explainable as a recalibration artifact, the analysis suite adjusting to a new performance baseline rather than the degraded one it had been working from for weeks. It was a good theory. The evidence supported it. He ran the numbers twice to confirm, found them consistent both times, and logged it. Unit 7, hardware maintenance event. Self-resolved, no action required. The power consumption variance sat cleanly alongside it. Firmware overhead on an improved format was exactly what the numbers suggested. Filed it, closed it. He turned back to the operations logs. 3 weeks of material that he needed to review. He started where he always started, the most recent capture. The first frames of the restored feed showed the workshop, Hutton's bench and Hutton's hands, those scarred, unhurried hands, setting something down on the surface near where the unit was positioned, withdrawing, crossing back to the workbench without looking at the unit, without looking at anything except the project waiting for him there. DeVale ran his standard behavioral check, subject visible, moving away from unit position, no threat indicators, no awareness of unit placement, no anomalous behavior. He noted it, then moved on. Unit 4 was performing normally. Feed clean, numbers steady, log unremarkable in every respect. He ran his checks and turned to Unit 6. Unit 6. 3 blackout entries. He had finished pulling the log before the number registered. 3. He went back to the top. The first, 11 hours, 17 minutes. 3 weeks ago, the same window as Unit 4's blackout. The second, 9 hours, 41 minutes. 12 days ago. The third, 8 hours, 53 minutes. Today, with Unit 7. He felt the small professional irritation of coincidence presenting itself uninvited, and he ran the diagnostic with more care than he had given Unit 7. The Directorate's unofficial mantra surfaced unbidden. There are no coincidences. The feed quality after restoration improved. Higher resolution, richer in the mid-spectrum, detail returning in the low-light ranges, sharper acoustic capture, the same format variance that had taken his analysis suite 3 additional cycles to decode on Unit 7. He checked his own log entry for Unit 6. He had filed it as a sensor recalibration event 12 days ago, in his own hand. He turned to Unit 4. 3 blackout entries. The timestamps matched Unit 6 exactly, all 3. Every blackout on every unit occurring simultaneously, across 3 separate occasions over 3 weeks. His notation, his filing, his signature on the record, 3 times. He sat back. 3 units, 3 blackouts, 3 improvements, spread across 3 weeks, each one encountered by him individually, each one explained to his own satisfaction, each one filed and set aside, looked at in sequence, laid out together. They formed a shape that his individual explanations had not prepared him for. He deleted the sensor recalibration theory without filing it. The explanation had satisfied him for Unit 7 because he had been looking at one anomaly in isolation. One anomaly permitted a self-contained explanation. 3 anomalies with identical signatures across 3 separate platforms spread across 3 weeks did not. The explanation that had worked once and then quietly worked again 12 days later without him connecting the two did not survive being asked to account for all 3 simultaneously. He had explained the same thing 3 times and not noticed he was doing it. The directorate ran on the principle that a well-ordered record did not lie. He had, it turned out, been building a very well-ordered record of being wrong. He filed that observation in a place he did not examine closely and went back to the pre-blackout feeds. Unit 4, 3 weeks ago, the workshop. Deep in the quiet window, Hutton at his bench. The magnification device, the pause, the eye track, the return to work, the blackout. Unit 6, 12 days ago. The workshop, the same. The pause, the eye track, the return to work, the blackout. 3 times. The same hands, the same calm. 3 weeks of it. DeVale ran a full deep diagnostic on Unit 7. Not the standard restoration check, the full diagnostic. What the engineering division ran before deployment. 40 minutes that downloaded everything the unit had ever contained. It returned more than he had asked for. He almost moved past it. A single anomaly in the diagnostic return, small enough to sit inside the margin of a standard sweep. His eyes snagged on it. He ran it again. 2 surface mount solid-state components that had not been present when the unit shipped. Small enough to disappear into the existing assembly, neither interfered with the unit's primary function in any way that would surface in a standard sweep. The first, a storage device, drawing the steady power load he had filed as firmware overhead, capturing everything the unit captured. The second, a burst transmitter, periodic, low power, drawing mere milliwatts, gone before any sweep could characterize it. Both installed with enough care that they had survived 3 weeks of routine diagnostic checks without surfacing, operating on a frequency band outside anything the Directorate sweep protocols were calibrated to detect. It had been transmitting in bursts since the unit was returned. He ran the power consumption against the storage device's power logs. It accounted for the steady overhead he had filed as firmware overhead, nearly all of it. The remainder was periodic, low power, consistent with brief transmission events. He logged it as unresolved and moved on. He ran the full diagnostic on Units 4 and 6. Unit 4, the same 2 components in the imaging assembly, same placement, same frequency band, discrete frequency. Unit 6, the same. All 3 units, all 3 feeds, the same modification, installed 3 separate times. On 3 separate occasions over 3 weeks. Unit 4's storage device had been drawing power since the first blackout. 21 days of the Directorate feed, possibly recorded and transmitted in bursts to wherever Hutton was receiving it. DeVale pulled the pre-blackout feed for Unit 7 one more time. He moved playback to the moment he had noted and filed. The pause. Hutton's hands stilling on the bench, his attention shifting toward the unit's position. Hutton had not been distracted. He had not experienced a momentary lapse in concentration before returning to his work. The evidence said otherwise. He had located the unit, identified it for what it was. In the remaining 43 minutes before the feed ended, he had finished what he was doing, set his tools down in good order, and waited for the quiet window. Then he must have taken the unit apart. 8 hours, 53 minutes of dark, the third time. Then the feed came back online. Hudson had not looked at the unit once. He had worked with the same economy and the same unhurried attention he brought to everything, knowing the feed was running and giving it nothing to see. DeVale looked at the notation he had made. No threat behavior, no indication of awareness, of surveillance. He did not delete it. It was accurate. In its narrow way. There had been no threat behavior. There had been no indication, none that he had read correctly at the time. He looked at the current feed, Hutton at his bench, scarred hands moving over the project in progress. More components integrated now than in the earliest feed. The shape of it more defined, still not identifiable, still not in any catalogue. For 21 days Hutton had been watching them watch him. DeVale reached for his report form. He got as far as the header. The cursor sat there, blinking accusingly. The hardware fault category required a consistent failure mode across all 3 units. DeVale worked through it methodically. Hardware fault required a signature, power anomaly, temperature event, component failure logged in the unit's internal diagnostics. None of them contained a trace of anything. Hardware fault required something to have gone wrong. Nothing had gone wrong. He considered environmental interference. Environmental interference required a common external cause acting on 3 separate platforms across 3 separate weeks. He pulled the Serapis Station environmental record. Nothing correlated with the first blackout. Nothing with the second. The third blackout window was quieter than either of the preceding ones. Environmental interference required an environment that had interfered. The environment had done nothing of the kind. He considered hostile modification. Hostile modification required damage, degradation, or compromise of the unit's primary function. He ran the comparison across all 3 units. Pre-blackout performance against post-restoration performance. Every metric the units returned. Resolution, acoustic capture, emission masking, range, response latency. Every number had improved. Every single one. The units were not damaged, they were not degraded, they were not compromised in any operational sense that the word compromise was designed to cover. The word hostile assumed an adversarial intent expressed through harm. Nothing had been harmed, everything had been made better. DeVale stared at the header on his report form. He had a category problem. The Directorate's reporting taxonomy had been built over decades of operational experience, refined through hundreds of field incidents, and extended on 3 separate occasions during his own career to accommodate anomalies that had not fit the existing structure. It covered, he had always believed, the full range of things that could happen to surveillance equipment in the field. It covered failure and sabotage and interference and loss. It did not cover this. It did not have a category for 3 units taken apart, improved beyond their factory specification, fitted with components that had run clean for 3 weeks and returned to position as if nothing had happened. He had sent the firmware acknowledgement to the engineering division 3 days ago. They had responded that morning. 2 words. Which update? He had not yet replied. He was still staring at the header when Orath Sen appeared at the entrance to his section. Sen was his immediate superior in the operational chain, a careful man, deliberate in movement, not given to appearing somewhere without a reason. He had seen the diagnostic flags propagate through the record and had come to understand them before they went further. He walked Sen through it in the order he had assembled it. 3 units, 3 blackouts spread across 3 weeks, 3 restorations, each returning performance above the unit's rated specification. The component installations, same placement, same frequency band, discrete frequencies, installed on 3 separate occasions with enough care to survive weeks of routine diagnostics. The burst transmissions on each unit periodic and low power, running from the moment of restoration. The pre-blackout feed from each unit, the same hands, the same economy of motion, the same unhurried withdrawal and return to the bench 3 times. The same hands, the same calm. 3 weeks of Directorate intelligence in the possession of a Civilian contractor with no flagged clearances, no elevated access, no entry in any watch list the Directorate maintained. Sen looked at the 3 restored feeds displayed side by side. He was a trained analyst. He did not need the numbers. These were not feeds from the units the engineering division had shipped. He said, "File them as upgraded and redeploy." DeVale said, "We didn't upgrade them." Sen looked at the feeds. He looked at DeVale. His optical inserts caught the amber glow of the monitoring station and held it, flat and still, for a moment that ran slightly longer than the question warranted. He said, "Then who did?" DeVale did not answer. DeVale did not answer. He brought up the current feed from Serapis Station, Hutton at his bench, scarred hands moving with quiet attention over the project that had been sitting there, in various states of progress. For the entire 3 weeks of the operation, nothing in his posture or his movements suggested awareness of being observed. Nothing in his behavior had suggested it for 3 weeks. He was a man doing his work. They watched him for a moment, Hutton at his bench, unhurried, entirely unremarkable. Sen said, "Take it to Galen." Not because the threat metrics had moved. DeVale had checked them before assembling the report. Hutton had done nothing with 3 weeks of Directorate feed that had registered anywhere in the station's behavioral record. No changed movement patterns, no unusual contacts, no communication anomalies, no indication in any frame of any feed that anything had shifted in how he went about his days. The threat metrics had not moved at all. The Directorate did not have a category for this. Galen was the man who decided what to do when the categories ran out. That was the structure of the Directorate, and Sen was right to name it. Before he assembled the report package, DeVale looked at the thing on the bench. He had catalogued it on first observation, found nothing in the catalogue, noted it as background detail, and not returned to it since. It had simply been there, the way the bench and the tools and the walls of the workshop were there. He looked at it now. The evidence suggested that Hutton had known someone was watching from the beginning. The thing on the bench had been built in full view of units that were transmitting everything they captured in real time back to the Directorate. Whatever it was, it had taken shape in plain sight of 3 surveillance platforms that Hutton had found. Identified, disassembled, modified, and returned. He had continued building it throughout. He had built it while running his counter-surveillance operation. He had built it while watching them watch it. DeVale ran the components against the Directorate's full technical catalogue. Nothing matched. He cross-referenced against allied species' known hardware taxonomies, civilian classifications and military both, going back through the full accessible archive. Nothing. The assembly approach did not correspond to any known methodology, not a variant of an established form, not an adaptation of recognizable architecture. It followed its own internal logic, and the logic was one he could read from the outside. Not in any catalogue, no identifiable combination, no recognizable methodology. Nearly finished, it had been in approximately this state for 4 days. The same degree of completion, or near enough that the feed angle could not resolve any further progress. 4 days of nearly finished, sitting on the bench in plain view of a tapped feed. The question arrived without preamble and would not leave. Had it been built for its own sake, or had it been built for them to see? He recognized with the clarity of a man who had spent 11 years analyzing records expressly so that questions like this could be answered, that the information he needed was not in any file he could access. He flagged the object in the report, logged its description, its catalog status, or lack thereof, its construction timeline relative to the confirmed dates of Hutton's awareness. He noted the question. He took the full package to Galen. It was not the kind of report you transmitted. Reinhard Galen was not a man who reviewed things quickly. He had built the Directorate's operational apparatus over 23 years, not inherited it, not arrived to find it waiting for him, but built it, piece by piece, from the foundational question of what it meant to know something with certainty. Every protocol, every taxonomy, every feed architecture reflected a decision he had made or ratified. Not as a user navigating its outputs, the intelligence behind its structure. He took the report package and read it. All of it. He did not ask DeVale to summarize. He did not skip to the conclusions. He started at the beginning and read forward through the evidence in the order it had been assembled. DeVale stood and waited, watching the director's face for any indication of where he was in the material. There was none. Galen's expression did not change. He reviewed the blackout logs for all 3 units. He reviewed the diagnostic records, the pre-blackout feeds, the deep diagnostic returns. He reviewed the component specifications, placement, frequency, band, signal output. He pulled up the pre-blackout feed himself and watched it. Hutton at his bench on Unit 4's feed, working. The pause, the eye track toward the unit's position, the return to work, the blackout. The same on the other 2 units. He ran the numbers. Disassembly time for a unit of their class, for someone who knew what they were disassembling. Installation of 2 surface mount components, placed exactingly, invisibly, seated. Reassembly to a standard that would pass 3 weeks of routine diagnostics. Redeployment to position. He ran it for all 3 units. 11 hours 17 minutes, 9 hours 41 minutes, 8 hours 53 minutes. Decreasing duration across the 3 operations, apparently because the work was getting easier, because he had done it before. 3 simultaneous blackouts, each time, not 1 unit going dark. 3 of them. Something had suppressed every active unit in the shop at once, on 3 separate occasions, without leaving a signature in any environmental record. A jamming device. He filed that alongside the rest. He sat with that for a moment. The engineering division had spent 4 months developing their class. They had the schematics, the manufacturing documentation, the full specification history. They had built the thing. A contractor at a joint colony facility, working alone during a night cycle with no reference materials visible in any frame of the pre-blackout feed. He had taken it apart and put it back together better, 3 times across 3 different units, with increasing thoroughness, in under 12 hours each time. No tools Galen recognized, no consultation, no assistance, no record of any kind beyond Hutton's hands. The bench and the quiet. He sat with that for a moment longer than he had intended. The power consumption across all 3 units, storage device drawer accounted for, and something else. A periodic remainder, the burst transmitter, drawing mere milliwatts, there and gone before any sweep could characterize it. He was fairly certain he knew what it was. The engineering division had not pushed a firmware update. Nobody had pushed a firmware update. Hutton had provided a hardware update. He looked at DeVale. He said, "Did he know what they were from the first one?" DeVale brought up the pre-blackout feed for Unit 4, Hutton at his bench, the pause, the eye track, the return to work, the blackout. "Almost certainly," he said. Galen said nothing. He looked at the monitoring station around him, the feeds coming in from a dozen active operations, clean and sharp, everything logged, everything in its place, the system he had built. He looked, last, at the 3 Serapis feeds. Better than his engineers had built them, better because of those hands. His engineers had spent 2 development cycles trying to reach this standard. They had not reached it. Hutton had reached it alone, in a night cycle without schematics. He was quiet for a moment. He said, "Show me the object." DeVale brought it up. The current feed, the thing on the bench, nearly finished, sitting in plain view of a unit Hutton had opened, modified, and returned. Galen looked at it for a long time without speaking. He said, "What is it?" DeVale said, "It is not in any catalogue. Components unidentifiable in combination. Assembly methodology unlike anything in the technical library. The construction timeline overlaps with the probable period of Hutton's awareness. He had been building it throughout, including the full 21 days during which the components were active." Galen looked at it and said nothing. He thought about what Hutton had. 3 feats, his workshop for 3 weeks. Everything the Directorate had captured within those 4 walls. What the units were watching, how they were structured, what they logged and how they logged it. A partial picture, but an exact one. Every pattern of attention, every conclusion drawn within that room. 3 weeks of it. Running the entire time DeVale had been filing his reports, logging his observations, building the record he believed only the Directorate could see. And Hutton had done nothing with it, as far as Galen could determine. No alarm, no report, no contact outside his established patterns. He had gone about his work. He had continued building the thing on the bench in plain view. Patient. 4 days of nearly finished, sitting in the frame of a unit he had modified. Galen looked at the current feed. Hutton at his bench, patient, unhurried, the scarred hands moving over the project with the same quiet economy they had carried through every frame of 3 weeks of footage. The question surfaced and named itself. Everything they had watched Hutton do for 3 weeks had he chosen to show them.